It was October 13th, 2024, in Talavera de la Reina, Spain, when 26-year-old British influencer Lewis Stevenson set out on what would tragically become his final adventure. Known for his daring stunts and breathtaking exploits, Lewis had captivated thousands of followers with images and videos from dizzying heights, sharing his love for extreme, adrenaline-fueled activities. That morning, he had his eyes set on scaling the 630-foot Castilla-La Mancha Bridge, one of the tallest bridges in Spain, without any safety gear, hoping to capture the perfect shot for his Instagram. Friends and family had warned him repeatedly against such dangerous pursuits, but Lewis, driven by the thrill rather than fame or fortune, was determined. His grandfather, Clifford Stevenson, reflected on his grandson's motivations. Lewis didn't seek attention. He chased the rush, the exhilaration of pushing limits, of feeling alive in ways most could not imagine. His girlfriend, Savannah Parker, remembered his last words to her the night before, a simple, "I love you." Neither of them could have known those would be the final words she ever heard. That early Sunday morning, Lewis set off with a 24-year-old friend. Heavy rains had left the bridge slick and treacherous, but Lewis's focus never wavered. They climbed steadily, reaching about 165 feet above the ground when disaster struck. Lewis suddenly lost his grip. Time seemed to freeze as he fell, his body disappearing from sight. A passing driver witnessed the scene and immediately called for help. Emergency services arrived at 7:14 a.m., but there was nothing they could do. Lewis was gone. His friend, in shock and disbelief, could barely speak, and authorities later confirmed that no charges would be filed against him. The tragedy was compounded by haunting details. Savannah recalled that Lewis hadn't been feeling well that morning. He had told his friend he needed a moment to rest. She suspected he hadn't eaten, which may have weakened him before the climb. He had never experienced such symptoms before during his previous stunts. The fall, sudden and irreversible, sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community of thrill-seekers and influencers who had followed his fearless journey around the world. Tributes poured in from friends and fellow adventurers, each sharing memories of Lewis's daring spirit, his boundless energy, and the way he inspired those around him to embrace life fully, even if dangerously. His Instagram account, Expedition, documented climbs on skyscrapers, hotel rooftops, and iconic structures from New York to Mexico City. Each post a testament to his fearless approach to life. Just days earlier, he had shared a photo from the top of Nottingham Forest Stadium, unaware that it would be one of his last. The local community in Talavera de la Reina mourned deeply. Officials, including Macarena Munoz, the counselor for citizen security, reiterated the dangers of climbing the bridge and the strict prohibition in place. The tragedy highlighted the fine line between thrill-seeking and recklessness, raising questions that linger in the minds of family, friends, and fans alike. What if Lewis had taken the warnings more seriously? What if the weather had been clearer? What if he had paused, reconsidered, or been more cautious that morning? Lewis Stevenson's story is a stark reminder of both the allure and the peril of living on the edge. He will be remembered not only for his breathtaking feats and daring spirit, but for the passion and intensity he brought to every adventure. His life, tragically cut short, serves as a cautionary tale about the real dangers behind the pursuit of extreme thrills, and the fragile line that separates exhilaration from tragedy. It started with rain, days of it, sheets of water hammering the hills around Singkawang, softening the earth until it finally gave way. In the middle of the night, a landslide tore through Singka Zoo, snapping wood, bending metal, and slicing open the enclosure that held two young Sumatran tigers, barely 18 months old, but already powerful enough to command fear. By morning, the zoo was silent. Too silent. A 47-year-old zookeeper, A man who had walked those same paths for years was found lying near the damaged pen. His body bore the unmistakable wounds of claws and teeth, bite marks, deep scratches, the kind only a terrified animal trying to survive would leave. Authorities realized immediately the tigers were out, and the clock was already ticking. Panic rippled across Singkawang. Tourists were ordered to evacuate nearby attractions. Residents locked their doors. Police launched a massive hunt through dense forest, armed with drones, tranquilizer rifles, and the desperate hope that both tigers could be saved. Dead animals, a monkey, an ostrich, were found near the enclosure, chilling reminders of how quickly chaos had erupted in the dark. One of the tigers appeared first, slipping silently through the undergrowth. Officials aimed, fired, and by grace or luck, the tranquilizer dart hit. The young cat collapsed, breathing but alive. For a moment, it felt like the nightmare might be contained. But the second tiger, that was different. This one wasn't running, it was fighting. Officers tried again and again to sedate it, but the darts barely slowed it down. The cat prowled, growled, lunged, its instincts sharpened by fear and confusion. Every minute it stayed loose increased the danger to the entire town, and when it charged toward the edge of the forest, toward the nearest neighborhood, officials made an agonizing decision. They shot it, not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice left. Our priority is human safety, one official said, the weight of the moment heavy in his voice. Even then, no one felt victorious. It was tragedy all around. A zookeeper dead, a critically endangered tiger lost, and a community shaken by a disaster that began with nothing more than rain. In the end, one tiger was sedated and brought back to the zoo under tight watch, its life spared. But the damage could not be undone. With fewer than 400 Sumatran tigers left in the wild, every loss feels like a step closer to an irreversible future. And for the people of Singkawang, that night will forever be remembered as the moment nature broke through the walls and left heartbreak in its wake. It was November 11th, 2023 in Albania, when tragedy struck in front of stunned spectators. Rafael Dwamena, a 28-year-old Ghanaian forward known for his electrifying speed and powerful finishing, was representing KF Ignatia in a league match against FK Partizani. The game had barely reached the midway point of the first half when Dwamena suddenly collapsed on the field. One moment, he was sprinting into position, full of life and determination. The next, he was motionless on the grass. Teammates waved frantically for help. The referee halted play. Paramedics rushed in. But despite their desperate efforts, Rafael Dwamena was pronounced dead on the way to the hospital. The cause? Sudden cardiac arrest. For those who knew his story, the news hit like a punch to the gut. Dwamena wasn't just any player. He was a fighter, a man who had stared death in the face before and come back. Years earlier, doctors had discovered a dangerous heart condition that forced him to abandon a dream transfer to the English Premier League. He had even undergone surgery to have an implantable cardioverter defibrillator, an ICD, placed in his chest to regulate his heartbeat. That device once saved his life when he collapsed during a match in Austria. But somewhere along the way, Dwamena made a fateful decision. He had it removed. He wanted to play again, to feel the rush, to hear the crowd, to live the game that had defined his entire existence. Football was in his blood. Even as doctors warned him of the risks, Dwamena pressed on, returning to the pitch with the same passion that carried him from the dusty fields of Ghana to the bright lights of Europe. He had started in the Red Bull Ghana Academy, dazzling scouts with his raw speed and finishing ability. His journey took him to Austria, Switzerland, Spain, and Denmark, a roller coaster career marked by brilliance, heartbreak, and relentless perseverance. He had once been on the brink of Premier League glory. In 2017, Brighton and Hove Albion agreed to sign him from FC Zurich after he scored an astonishing 12 goals in just 18 matches. But during the medical exam, his world shattered. He failed due to a heart abnormality. What should have been his biggest break turned into a nightmare. Still, he refused to let the diagnosis define him. He moved to Levante in Spain's La Liga, then to Zaragoza on loan, and later to clubs in Denmark and Austria. Every time his heart condition returned to haunt him, he stepped away, and every time he came back, determined to reclaim his place on the field. His life was a battle between passion and mortality. In 2021, while playing in Austria, he collapsed mid-match but was revived when his ICD shocked his heart back to rhythm. It was a terrifying moment, a clear warning that the risk was real. But when he later signed with Ignatia in Albania, the dream called to him once more. He removed the device that had saved his life and decided to trust his body. He wanted to play without limits, without fear. And for a time, it seemed to work. He scored goals. He smiled again. Fans celebrated his resilience. When he found the net twice in a European qualifier for Ignatia in 2023, it felt like a redemption arc was unfolding, a man defying the odds, proving that courage could conquer fate. But fate had other plans. That November afternoon, as he lay on the pitch surrounded by medics, silence fell over the stadium. Players from both sides wept openly. The crowd watched in disbelief as the man who had fought so hard to keep playing was carried away for the final time. News of his death spread within hours, first across Albania, then throughout Europe, and finally back to Ghana, where he was beloved as a symbol of perseverance. The following day, football matches across Albania were postponed. Clubs, players, and fans around the world paid tribute to him. His teammates remembered not just his skill, but his spirit, the warmth he brought to the locker room, the hope he gave to others facing their own struggles. In February 2024, Rafael Dwamena was laid to rest on a football pitch in Accra, Ghana, the same kind of ground where his story began. Surrounded by family, friends, and fans, he was buried with his boots and his jersey, a man who lived and died for the game he loved. On July 14, 2019, in Utica, New York, 17-year-old Bianca Devens, a recent high school graduate with a growing online presence, was looking forward to her future. She shared her love for emo fashion and video games, and she dreamed of studying psychology at Mohawk Valley Community College. Friends and followers knew her for her bright smile, her humor, and the glimpses of her life she shared online. But that morning, everything changed. A few months earlier, Bianca had met 21-year-old Brandon Clark on Instagram. Their connection seemed stronger to him than it did to her. The day before, they had attended a concert together in New York City. On the drive back to Utica, an argument erupted in the car. The details remain murky, but what happened next was unimaginably violent. Bianca's life was cut short in a senseless act that stunned everyone who knew her. In the aftermath, Brandon shared horrific images of Bianca on social media platforms like Instagram and Discord. The images spread like wildfire, shocking viewers and leaving her family and friends devastated. One concerned person from Tennessee contacted the Utica Police Department after spotting a photo of Bianca with a serious neck injury tagged to her hometown. When officers arrived, they found Brandon beside his car, conscious but bleeding from self-inflicted injuries, still posting online. He was subdued and rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery, leaving Bianca's loved ones to grapple with a grief too heavy to bear. Bianca's family was shattered. Her mother, Kimberly Devens, spoke of the trauma of seeing her daughter's images circulated online. Strangers sent the photos to her and Bianca's sister Olivia, tagging them with hateful messages. Even as friends and family mourned, some members of online communities glorified Brandon and attacked Bianca, turning her death into a spectacle. Among the pain, a few tried to honor her memory, countering the cruelty with love, but the scars remained. During his trial, Brandon pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 years to life. He apologized in court, acknowledging the unimaginable harm he had caused, though his words could never undo the tragedy. Reports suggested that jealousy may have fueled his actions, triggered by Bianca's interactions with someone else at the concert. The relationship between them, friends, acquaintances, or something more, remains debated. What is undeniable is that obsession and uncontrolled emotion led to a life-ending tragedy. Bianca's story is a chilling reminder of the darker side of social media. Graphic images and cruel remarks amplified her death, haunting her family and friends for years. Kimberly Devens now speaks out, warning others about the dangers of online exploitation and the need for awareness and protection. Bianca's life, her bright future, and her untimely death continue to echo as a tragic caution. Behind every online profile is a real person, and sometimes that reality can end in heartbreak no one could imagine. Stacy Conweiser was known around the Palm Beach Zoo as the Tiger Whisperer. For more than 3 years, she worked closely with the zoo's 4 Malayan tigers, an endangered species so rare that fewer than 300 exist in the wild. But on April 15, 2016, during what should have been a normal afternoon, something went terribly wrong inside the Tiger Night House, the private area where the big cats eat and sleep, tucked far away from the visiting crowds. Stacy entered the enclosure to prepare for a 2 p.m. Tiger talk, the kind of presentation she had done countless times. It was quiet, familiar, and routine. But this time, Hottie, a 12-year-old, 350-pound male tiger, wasn't where he was supposed to be. Investigators later discovered a chilling detail. The door to Hattie's cage, which should have been locked, was open, and Stacy's view of him may have been blocked by a large box inside the enclosure. She never saw him coming. A scream burst across the zoo's radio system, desperate, panicked, and cut short. Stacy had only seconds to react, and her co-workers could only listen as the attack unfolded out of sight. By the time they sprinted toward the night house, Hattie was already standing over her. The attack was swift, brutal, and silent in the way only a top predator can be. Zoo staff faced an impossible choice. Hattie was an endangered species, and firing a bullet risked hitting Stacy or enraging the tiger further if the shot wasn't instantly fatal. So they tried to lure him away, calling him, coaxing him, begging him to step back from her body. Nothing worked. Only after a tranquilizer dart finally entered his flank were paramedics able to reach Stacy. 17 long minutes had passed. She was rushed to St. Mary's Medical Center, but the injuries were catastrophic. Her spine fractured, her jugular torn, her neck crushed. She died shortly after arrival. Outside the night house, guests had no idea what was happening. They were quietly escorted out of the zoo as investigators arrived. OSHA, Florida Fish and Wildlife, and police trying to piece together how an experienced, disciplined keeper ended up face-to-face with a tiger in an unsecured space. There were no operating cameras inside the night house. The ones installed were only turned on during breeding attempts. The attack played out in a blind spot, unwitnessed by anyone. In the hours after the tragedy, the zoo, the staff, and the world learned more about Stacy, the devoted keeper who risked her life every day to protect a species on the brink of disappearing. Her husband, Jeremy, also a keeper, wrote a private tribute read to staff in an emotional meeting. Officials spoke about her passion, her discipline, her understanding of the risks. She had even recently been offered a chance to leave the zoo for a job with the FDA, a safer life, a different path, but she hadn't made a decision yet. Some blamed protocol, some blamed human error. Others argued that no matter how many precautions are taken, working with apex predators always carries a chance of tragedy. The Animal Legal Defense Fund issued a blistering statement, calling this a preventable incident and demanding maximum penalties, insisting that as long as humans work inches away from tigers and elephants, these kinds of deaths will continue. But for those who knew Stacy, the story was simpler and far more heartbreaking. She loved these animals so deeply that she accepted the danger every single day. And on that April afternoon, in a quiet room behind the scenes, that danger became reality. It was June 26, 2003, a night that should have been another proud chapter in Cameroon's football history. The semi-final of the FIFA Confederations Cup was underway in Lyon, France. The crowd roared, the floodlights glowed, and in the middle of it all stood Marc-Vivien Foé-Tall, commanding and seemingly invincible, a warrior for his nation, the heart of Cameroon's midfield. But in the 72nd minute, something happened that silenced the world. Foé, without a single player near him, suddenly collapsed to the ground. No foul, no collision, just a man falling where he stood. For a moment, the crowd thought he had tripped, maybe cramped up, but he didn't move. His eyes stared blankly toward the sky as teammates screamed for help. Medical staff sprinted onto the pitch, desperately fighting against time. For 45 long minutes, doctors worked frantically to bring him back. CPR, oxygen, defibrillators, everything humanly possible was tried. Inside that stadium, thousands of fans waited in stunned silence, watching their hero's life slip away. When the announcement came that Marc Vivien Foé had died, football itself seemed to stop breathing. He was only 28 years old. The autopsy would later reveal the cause of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a hereditary heart condition that silently kills even the strongest athletes. There were no warning signs, no second chances. The heart that had carried him through years of fierce battles on the field had suddenly betrayed him. What made this tragedy so haunting wasn't just that it happened during a major international match, or that it unfolded live before millions of viewers. It was the way Foé fell alone, unchallenged, as if fate itself had chosen that moment. His teammates were shattered. Opponents stood frozen, tears streaming down their faces. Thierry Henry, playing in the other semi-final that same night, pointed to the sky after scoring, dedicating his goal to Foé. In the days that followed, the football world united in grief. Manchester City retired his number 23 shirt. Lens and Lion withdrew the number 17 in his honor. Streets were renamed after him. Even years later, his name still echoes in the hearts of fans, a symbol of passion, dedication, and the cruel unpredictability of life. Foé wasn't just a player, he was a father, a husband, and a man who played every match with heart, quite literally, until the very end. His widow later revealed that he had been unwell before the game, suffering from stomach problems and exhaustion. But Foé had insisted on playing. Lion was his second home, and he wanted to perform in front of the fans who had embraced him. Even as his coach tried to substitute him, Foé waved him off, determined to continue. Minutes later, he was gone. He left behind a wife, children, and millions of grieving fans, but also a legacy that transcended sport. His son would later stand on the field before the 2009 Confederations Cup final, speaking briefly but powerfully in memory of his father, a man who gave everything for his country and his dream. Marc Vivien Foé's death remains one of the most horrifying and heartbreaking moments in football history. It was a brutal reminder that even the strongest hearts can break, and sometimes they do it right in front of the world. On December 22, 2021, the influencer world was shaken by the sudden death of Maya Chinsky, known online as Mava Cho. At just 32, she was a mother of 4, a vibrant presence in the YouTube community with over 150,000 subscribers, and a woman who shared her life openly, inviting fans into her world through personal family vlogs. But behind her cheerful videos and curated posts, Maya was battling something far darker: relentless online harassment that pushed her to the breaking point. Maya had openly discussed the toll of constant bullying on her mental health, explaining how the threats, degrading messages, and false accusations made her feel trapped and constantly watched. On the day she died, she had filed a legal complaint against her ex-husband, Adrian Chinsky, accusing him of using his online platform to incite harassment against her across Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch. The complaint detailed emotional abuse, false claims about her parenting, and a continuous wave of public attacks. The very platforms where Maya once found joy and connection had become arenas of cruelty. Following her death, the investigation revealed the full extent of the harassment she endured. On February 27, 2024, Adrian and his new partner were placed under judicial supervision and charged with harassment that allegedly contributed to Maya's passing. For Maya's family and her last partner, Roman, it was a small step toward justice, a recognition that her suffering had not gone unnoticed. Maya's lawyer confirmed that the charges reflected substantial evidence of actions that directly impacted her well-being. Adrian, however, denied all wrongdoing, claiming he had done nothing to harm Maya and pledging to protect their children while countering the wave of negativity that followed her death. Maya's journey online had begun in 2013, and by 2018, she had grown into a significant figure, sharing her unfiltered life as a mom on her channel, Mahavu, an unapologetic mom. She had even appeared on a reality show, which increased her reach and influence. By the end of her life, she had 151,000 YouTube subscribers, 990,000 Instagram followers, and 38,000 Facebook followers. Her content inspired many, but it also exposed her to a relentless digital spotlight that few could escape. Her personal life was complex, She lived in Bâtiment with Adrien, raising their 4 children while running a marketing and information business together. They had established a charity to support orphanages, but their relationship deteriorated over time, culminating in a bitter split. In the months before her death, Maya filed 5 complaints against Adrien for emotional distress, but they did not lead to immediate action, leaving her frustration and fear unresolved. Meanwhile, Adrien, posting online under Adrien Vlog and blah blah, publicly denied any responsibility for the harassment, framing himself and his new partner as victims of ongoing attacks and pledging to support their children. Maya's story raises urgent and painful questions. Could her complaints have been acted on sooner? Could social media platforms have done more to prevent harassment? Could her community of fans and supporters have intervened in time? These unanswered questions highlight the devastating consequences of online abuse and the vulnerability of influencers who live their lives in the public eye. It started as a routine maintenance job, an ordinary winter morning at Seaview Predator Park. David Solomon, 52 years old and a familiar face to every tiger on the property, walked the service corridor with the calm confidence of someone who had spent 15 years in the presence of animals most people only see through glass. He knew their habits, their moods, their quirks. He had raised some of them from cubs. Jasper was one of them, a massive, unpredictable Siberian tiger David had known since the animal's earliest days. But routine is a dangerous illusion, especially when you're working beside a predator powerful enough to kill you in seconds. The electric fence separating Jasper from the maintenance area had been switched off so repairs could be made. For David, this wasn't unusual. He had done this work many times. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Jasper had been watching, silent, calculating, pressing his weight against the fence that normally snapped with electric warning, but today lay quiet and powerless. In a heartbeat, Jasper scaled the 12-foot barrier as effortlessly as if it were nothing more than a fallen tree. Staff members nearby froze. David turned, and there was no mistaking what he saw. A 675-pound tiger charging full speed down the corridor toward him. He ran. He lunged for the next fence, desperately trying to climb to safety, fingers curling around the metal mesh, but Jasper reached him too quickly. The tiger's claws hooked into David's clothing and skin, dragging him down before he could pull himself over. Witnesses later said the sound of the impact, David hitting the ground under hundreds of pounds of muscle, was something they would never forget. The tiger bit, shook, and overpowered him in seconds. Evidence suggests Jasper snapped his neck in the struggle, ending David's life almost instantly. But the nightmare didn't stop there. Fueled by instinct and adrenaline, Jasper scaled yet another fence, this one also without power, and entered the neighboring enclosure where a rival male, Judah, lived. Staff watched in horror as the two enormous tigers clashed in a violent, fatal fight that left Judah dead within moments. By then, the situation had spiraled into something almost surreal, a chain reaction caused by one small detail, a fence that wasn't energized. As Jasper approached Judah's sister Amber, displaying dominant mating behavior, park officials called in veterinarians and wildlife authorities. With no other options, they darted both tigers, tranquilizing them so David's body could be recovered along with Judah's remains. It took all available hands, all available courage to enter that corridor again. Those who knew David spoke through tears. They described him as loyal, gentle, deeply bonded to the animals he cared for. Someone who had helped raise Jasper from a cub, who had moved him to different enclosures, who had spent years understanding a creature that, in the end, turned on him simply because instinct overpowered history. The park released a statement filled with grief, confirming not just the tragedy but the way it unfolded. A fence under repair, a tiger seizing an opportunity, a keeper caught in the wrong place at the worst possible moment. What killed David wasn't negligence or cruelty. It was the brutal, unforgiving reality of working with apex predators, where even one moment without electricity, one step in the wrong corridor, can become fatal. For the staff who witnessed it, the memory will never leave them. David, reaching for the fence, Jasper's silent leap, the frantic attempts to save him that came too late. It was a reminder that in predator parks and zoos, even with experience, love, and years of familiarity, wild animals are wild animals, and sometimes nature doesn't offer mercy. It was September 1990 at Bootham Crescent, home of York City. The crowd buzzed with energy as the Minstermen faced Lincoln City in what seemed like an ordinary 4th Division match. On the pitch, 25-year-old striker David Longhurst sprinted across the field, doing what he loved most. He was the underdog every fan rooted for, chasing one last dream in the lower leagues of English football. Then, in an instant, everything changed. The ball had moved to the other side of the field. There was no challenge, no foul, no warning. David was standing alone when suddenly he staggered and collapsed. The stadium fell silent. For a few seconds, fans thought maybe he'd tripped. Maybe it was a cramp, but the way he fell, the stillness told a different story. Teammates rushed toward him. The referee waved frantically for the medics. Spectators looked on in horror as the young striker lay motionless on the turf. Within minutes, the ambulance arrived. Paramedics worked desperately to revive him. Players knelt and prayed. Some couldn't even look. He was rushed to the hospital, but he never made it. David John Longhurst was pronounced dead that afternoon. 25 years old, gone in the middle of a match. It was the first time a player had died during a football league game in 63 years. Doctors later confirmed the cause of a rare, undetected heart condition called cardiomyopathy, a disease that silently weakens the heart until it simply stops. To everyone watching, David looked fit and strong, but inside, something deadly had been hiding all along. For the world of lower league football, it was a brutal wake-up call. These weren't millionaire athletes with elite medical teams. They were working-class players giving everything for local pride. And now, one of them had died in front of thousands of horrified fans. News spread fast. On the radio, David's father, Vic, heard the devastating announcement while driving. "We were just sitting there trying to take it in," he later said. "It was devastating. There had been no contact, no warning. It was something you couldn't explain. At first, people assumed it was a heart attack, but the post-mortem revealed a genetic defect no regular checkup could have found. You have to have an ultrasonic scan for these things to show up," Vic explained. David had all the usual examinations, but nothing ever appeared. After his son's death, Vic made it his mission to campaign for better heart screening in sports for every athlete at every level. He warned that more lives could be saved with proper scans. When Fabrice Muamba collapsed in 2012 and survived, Vic's message echoed louder than ever. Doctors and charities pushed for mandatory screenings, citing Italy, where such measures had reduced sudden cardiac deaths by 90%. Yet in England, testing remained optional. For York City, the loss was deeply personal. David wasn't just another signing, he was their spark, their fighter. To honor him, the club renamed one of their stands the David Longhurst Stand, ensuring his name would live on in the place where he gave everything. It was June 19, 2019, in Brooklyn, New York, when 29-year-old Desmond Amofa, known to his fans as Etika, disappeared from the world he had built online. Known for his high-energy personality and love for gaming, especially Nintendo, Desmond had become a beloved figure in the gaming community. Thousands of fans tuned in to watch his live streams and videos, drawn to his infectious enthusiasm. But behind the smiles and excitement, Desmond was fighting a silent, devastating battle with his mental health. Months earlier, in October 2018, YouTube had suspended his channel, EW Network, after he posted content that violated community guidelines. The suspension marked a turning point. His posts and streams grew unpredictable, sometimes alarming, hinting at a deepening struggle. In April 2019, Desmond live-streamed a standoff with police, posting disturbing images of himself holding a gun. Authorities intervened, and he was taken to a hospital for evaluation. For those who followed him, it was a shocking glimpse into the turmoil he faced behind the screen. On that fateful day in June, Desmond uploaded a video titled, "I'm Sorry," to his channel, T1 Iaman. In the 8-minute clip, he spoke directly to his followers. expressing regret, apologizing for his recent behavior, and signaling a distress that went far beyond anything fans could have prepared for. Alarmed, viewers reached out to authorities, but shortly after posting the video, Desmond vanished. For 5 days, the city searched. The New York Police Department issued public alerts, calling on anyone who might have seen him to come forward. But the worst fears were realized on June 25th. Desmond's body was found in the East River in Lower Manhattan. The gaming world was stunned. Fans, fellow creators, and even YouTube itself shared messages of heartbreak and condolences. The official YouTube creator account acknowledged the loss of someone who had inspired and entertained thousands, mourning a bright life extinguished far too soon. Desmond's story exposed the intense pressures that come with online fame, the constant expectation to perform, to entertain, and to engage with massive audiences can magnify underlying mental health struggles. Experts note that while social media can connect people, it can also intensify anxiety, depression, and isolation, especially for influencers whose lives are always on display. Researchers like Kaylee Cruzen from Cornell University stress the urgent need for studies on the unique impact of social media on public figures, where attention can become a double-edged sword. Even with support from fans, the gaps in sustained mental health care were painfully clear. Desmond's messages on platforms like Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube in his final months revealed deep distress, a silent cry for help that went beyond what his followers could provide. A sports consultant, Rod Breslau, reflected on the immense pressures influencers face, noting how demanding it can be to manage large audiences while navigating personal struggles. His passing ignited urgent conversations about the responsibilities of social media platforms, the need for proactive mental health support, and the dangers of leaving creators without a safety net. Dr. Victor Schwartz, Chief Medical Officer of the JED Foundation, emphasized the need for accessible, proactive interventions that connect vulnerable individuals with professional resources. Desmond's story is both heartbreaking and cautionary. It is a reminder that behind every online persona is a real human being, grappling with real challenges. His life and work touched thousands, leaving a legacy in the Nintendo and Smash gaming communities that will not be forgotten. Yet it also serves as a stark warning. Mental health struggles can lurk beneath the brightest smiles, and without support, even the most vibrant lives can end in tragedy. Rosa King arrived at Hamerton Zoo Park that morning the same way she always did, with quiet focus, a sense of purpose, and the kind of calm confidence only a seasoned carnivore keeper possesses. She loved the big cats, especially the Malayan tiger named Sisip. To visitors, Rosa was the smiling face behind the glass. To her colleagues, she was the dependable, safety-minded keeper who never cut corners. And on May 29, 2017, just before the zoo was set to open at 10 a.m., she walked into the tiger paddock to do something she had done hundreds of times: clean the viewing windows. It should have been ordinary, safe, routine. But somewhere in the process, a single detail, a metal isolation slide meant to guarantee separation between human and tiger, was left open. A mistake so small, so simple, yet so catastrophic that no one noticed it until it was too late. Working alone, likely tired from long hours and late-night serval kitten feedings, Rosa stepped inside the enclosure, unaware that Sisip had unobstructed access to the same space. The tiger was quiet, hidden, watching. There were no witnesses, no cameras running, no colleague to double-check the locks. What happened inside that enclosure took place in absolute silence. Sometime between 10 and 11 a.m., a zoo visitor looked through the public viewing window expecting to see a tiger, and instead saw Rosa, motionless on the ground. The alarm went up instantly. Staff rushed to the paddock and found a scene that told the story in chilling fragments. A large pool of blood, Rosa's keys scattered beside a blood-stained paw print, a wet cloth, a squeegee, an upturned bucket. Tools of a peaceful morning chore interrupted by a sudden violent attack. Police and investigators combed through the space, checking every slide, every gate, every mechanism that should have prevented this from happening. There was no mechanical failure, no malfunction. The gates were simply open, 3 of them. The metal vertical slide separating Sisip from the keeper area, the protective keeper gate, even a wooden gate that blocked public access to the service path. All open, all accessible. Colleagues believed Rosa may have been trying to leave the paddock when Sisip struck, possibly after stalking her silently for several minutes. The injuries she suffered were devastating: lacerations to her arms and neck and a severed spinal cord. She died before anyone reached her. During the inquest, experts described a psychological phenomenon familiar to anyone who performs the same task day after day. Sometimes you look at a lock, a gate, a slide, and your brain sees what it expects to see, not what's actually there. Even experienced keepers can fall prey to the mind's shortcuts, and Rosa, exhausted and working a demanding 45-hour week, may have simply missed the one detail that separated safety from deadly risk. Her colleagues defended her fiercely. She was careful, methodical, the last person anyone expected to overlook a safety step, but the system at the zoo relied entirely on the human performing it. No secondary check, no redundant safeguard, just trust. Trust in training, trust in memory. Trust that nothing would ever slip. The jury ruled Rosa's death an accident, a devastating, tragic intersection of human error and animal instinct. It was supposed to be just another Sunday night in Portuguese football. January 25, 2004, Vitória de Guimarães versus Benfica, a normal league fixture, broadcast live to millions across the country. The air was crisp, the crowd loud, and Benfica's young Hungarian striker Miklós "Miki" Feher was ready to make an impact. He came on as a substitute in the second half, full of energy, his trademark grin lighting up the field. He even set up the only goal of the match, a perfect assist that seemed to seal a quiet victory for Benfica. But as the game ticked into injury time, something unthinkable happened. The referee raised a yellow card. Feher smiled, tilted his head down, hands on his knees, and then, suddenly, without warning, he fell backwards. For a few seconds, the world stood still. Players from both teams froze, unsure if it was a prank, a feint, or something worse. Then came the panic. Teammates rushed to him. One lifted his head, another screamed for help. The stadium, moments earlier filled with chants, turned eerily silent as Feher lay motionless on the wet grass. The medics stormed onto the pitch. CPR began immediately. Players knelt in prayer. Others turned away, tears already streaming down their faces. Benfica's coach, José Antonio Camacho, broke down on the sideline. Cameras continued to roll, the horror unfolding live on national television. For a brief moment, there was hope. The medical team managed to get a response, and as Feher was stretchered off the field, fans clung to the belief that he would recover. But within hours, the devastating news broke. Miklós Feher was gone, just 24 years old. The autopsy would later confirm what no one could have predicted: cardiac arrhythmia caused by hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a hidden heart condition that strikes without warning. His heart had simply given out in the middle of the game. It was a cruel, haunting moment. Feher wasn't just a footballer, he was a symbol of joy, passion, and youthful promise. To watch someone so full of life collapse and never rise again shook the entire world of football. The image of his final smile just seconds before he fell burned itself into history. His death sent shockwaves far beyond Portugal. In the following days, fans filled the stands with flowers, candles, and scarves. Benfica retired his number 29 shirt, ensuring no player would ever wear it again. Rivals put aside differences, and Porto's staff, including José Mourinho, personally paid their respects. At Benfica's Estádio da Luz, thousands came to see his body before it was flown home to Hungary for burial. And even there, the mourning didn't stop. The entire Benfica squad, along with the club's president and manager, traveled to Hungary to honor him, presenting his parents with a league championship medal their son never got to hold. The team dedicated their cup win to his memory. For the rest of that season, every Benfica goal, every cheer, every celebration carried his spirit. Years later, Hungary's national team would return to Lisbon to lay a wreath beside his bust, and on what would have been his 43rd birthday, another tribute was held at the very stadium where his heart stopped. Time passed, but the image never faded. That smile, that collapse, the tears, the disbelief. It was September 27, 2024, in Tbilisi, Georgia, when 27-year-old TikTok personality Irina Glazunova set out for what should have been an ordinary evening with friends. Known for her vibrant personality and infectious energy, Irina had captivated thousands of followers online. Her videos showcased everything from her playful antics to quiet personal moments, and her fans loved the way she made them feel part of her life. That night, like so many others, Irina carried her phone with her, recording snippets of laughter, shared jokes, and candid moments with friends. The city streets seemed alive beneath their feet, and Irina's excitement was palpable, her camera capturing the joy that had become a signature part of her presence online. Their wandering eventually led them to a dimly lit subway station. The faint glow of the station lights barely illuminated the steps leading down, casting long shadows across the ground. Irina, ever the performer, decided to sing a song by the Russian band Hunger Boys for the last time, while her friend filmed her. She was fully immersed in the moment, her voice carrying lightly across the station, completely absorbed in the music and the lens. She laughed, gestured to the camera, and appeared entirely in her element. But in her focus, she didn't notice the knee-high wall at the edge of the stairs, a low, seemingly harmless barrier that would soon change everything. In a single, tragic misstep, Irina tripped over the wall. Her body disappeared over the edge into the underpass below. The video captured her final scream, echoing off the concrete walls before the recording went dark, replaced by the frantic voices of friends calling her name, rushing to reach her. Emergency responders arrived within minutes, but Irina had suffered catastrophic injuries, including severe head trauma. Despite the doctors' desperate attempts to save her, she did not survive. The news of her passing rippled quickly through social media. Fans and friends were stunned, unable to reconcile the cheerful, vibrant Irina they knew online with the sudden tragedy. What had begun as a night of laughter and music ended in heartbreak, a stark reminder of how fragile life can be. A memorial soon appeared at the station, with flowers, candles, and heartfelt messages left by mourners. People who had never met her in person shared their grief, connecting through shared sadness and remembering the joy she had brought to so many. But the tragedy also sparked urgent questions and debates. The video of Irina's accident went viral, forcing social media users and journalists to examine the safety of the station. Why had such a hazard been left unprotected? Could a simple guardrail or barrier have prevented the accident? Critics pointed to the fact that the station had been designed during the Soviet era, with infrastructure that, while technically up to modern standards, failed to account for the real-world risks posed to pedestrians in the dark. City officials assured the public that the station met current safety guidelines, but many remained unconvinced, demanding immediate upgrades to prevent similar accidents in the future. Irina's death also served as a chilling reminder of the dangers posed by distraction in public spaces. Phones, cameras, and constant documentation of life's moments have become so ingrained in everyday behavior that even minor lapses in attention can have devastating consequences. Social media culture, which encourages capturing every moment for likes and views, may have inadvertently contributed to this tragedy, highlighting a growing public concern about the risks of recording content in unsafe environments. For Irina's family and friends, the grief has been profound and unrelenting. They remember her not just as a TikTok personality, but as a daughter, a friend, and a light in every room she entered. The videos she once posted for entertainment are now bittersweet relics of her life, cherished memories shadowed by the knowledge of what was lost. Her laughter, energy, and spirit continue to resonate, reminding those who knew her of the unique spark she brought to the world. Her story, however, reaches beyond personal grief. It has sparked discussions about public safety, urban infrastructure, and the responsibilities of both city planners and social media users. Safety advocates have used her death as a rallying point to demand stricter regulations, better lighting, visible barriers, and more thoughtful urban design to protect citizens. It was a warm Saturday afternoon at Zurich Zoo, a day when families wandered the pathways expecting nothing more intense than the sight of a yawning tiger or a lazy, sunbathing lion. No one imagined they would become witnesses to one of the most harrowing moments the zoo had ever seen. At around 1:20 p.m., inside the Siberian tiger enclosure, a 55-year-old veteran keeper went about her duties, routine tasks she had performed countless times over her long career. She was experienced, respected, trusted, but on this afternoon, one detail, one barrier not fully secured, set the stage for tragedy. Somewhere inside the enclosure, a young Siberian tigress named Irina, powerful and curious, had access she shouldn't have had. And while the keeper focused on her work, Irina closed the distance silently. Visitors standing on the other side of the glass watched in confusion at first, then horror, as the tigress lunged. Their screams cut through the air. Someone hit the alarm. What happened next unfolded in frantic seconds. Keepers sprinted toward the enclosure, knowing exactly what kind of danger they were running into. Shouting, banging, doing anything they could to draw Irina's attention away from their fallen colleague, they managed to lure the tiger into a holding pen, but the damage was already done. First responders rushed in, administering CPR with trembling urgency, fighting for a life already slipping away. Despite everything, every effort, every second, they couldn't bring her back. She died on the cold ground of the enclosure she had dedicated years to caring for. Zoo officials, police, and investigators arrived quickly, but there was only one question anyone could ask. Why was she inside the enclosure at the same time as a fully grown Siberian tiger? There was no sign of malice, no sabotage. The prosecutors would later describe it as something painfully human, a moment of inattention, a mistake that cost a life in the most unforgiving environment imaginable. Irina, the tigress, was not harmed. She had simply acted on instinct, the instinct any wild animal carries no matter how many years it has lived behind walls. The zoo director offered condolences through shaken words, describing the keeper as a long-standing, valued member of their team. Staff and visitors who had seen the attack were offered psychological counseling. Some had watched the entire thing play out just a few feet away, separated only by glass. Hours earlier, the zoo had reopened after a long COVID shutdown, hoping to bring families a sense of normalcy. By evening, it was closed again, silent, grieving, haunted by the echo of visitors' screams and the alarm bell that signaled the moment everything went wrong. The truth that lingered in everyone's minds afterward was stark and chilling. In the world of big cats, even one forgotten latch, one unsecured barrier, one human moment of trust in routine can become fatal. The keeper was experienced. She knew the risks. Yet, on that afternoon, surrounded by the animals she dedicated her life to, she had no chance to fight back or escape. The enclosure returned to stillness, but for those who witnessed it, the memory of Irina's sudden movement and the desperate attempts to save a life will never fade. It was a reminder that even in the safest, most controlled zoos, the raw power of nature can erupt without warning, and when it does, it is brutal, swift, and irreversible. It was a cold afternoon on December 29, 2007, at Fir Park, home of Motherwell Football Club. The stands were alive with noise, scarves waving, fans bundled up against the Scottish winter. Their captain, Phil O'Donnell, a man who had spent nearly 2 decades earning respect on and off the pitch, was leading from the front, as always, calm, composed, and committed. The match against Dundee United seemed like any other day in the Scottish Premier League. Nothing unusual, nothing foreboding. Motherwell were in control, the game winding toward its end. Then, in a moment no one could have predicted, everything changed. As the fourth official prepared to raise his board for a substitution, O'Donnell began to slow down. He looked pale, unsteady. Just as he was about to be replaced, he staggered and collapsed. For a few seconds, the crowd went silent, the kind of silence that grips an entire stadium when something feels terribly wrong. Players froze in disbelief before rushing toward him. Medics sprinted onto the pitch. The atmosphere turned from routine to panic in an instant. Fans watched in horror as their captain and their hero lay motionless on the turf he had graced for years. Both Motherwell and Dundee United doctors worked desperately to revive him, performing CPR as the crowd prayed, some crying openly in the stands. The minutes stretched on like hours. Then the stretcher came out. As he was carried away to the ambulance, supporters rose to their feet, clapping, whispering his name, hoping he would be okay. But at 5:18 p.m. the news came. Philip O'Donnell had died. He was just 35 years old. The post-mortem revealed heart failure in the left ventricle. The part of the heart that pumps oxygen-rich blood had simply stopped. It was the kind of silent killer no one sees coming, not even in a professional athlete who seemed the picture of fitness. For the Motherwell faithful, it was unbearable. Phil wasn't just their captain, he was one of them. Born in Bellshill, just a few miles away, he'd started with the club as a teenager, scoring in their 1991 Scottish Cup final victory and earning praise for his bravery and spirit. He had gone on to play for Celtic and Sheffield Wednesday before coming home not just to play, but to lead. He was Uncle Phil to his younger teammates, a mentor to many, and the heart of the dressing room. In the days that followed, Scotland mourned. Fans from across the country, even rival clubs, laid scarves, shirts, flowers, and handwritten notes outside Fir Park. Tributes poured in from around the world. The Scottish Premier League postponed Motherwell's next matches out of respect, and even Celtic and Rangers' bitter rivals agreed to delay their derby game to honor him. Across the border, English clubs paid their own tributes. Players wore black armbands. Stadiums fell silent. Everton's James McFadden, once O'Donnell's teammate, scored and pointed toward the sky, eyes filled with tears. It wasn't just Scotland that grieved. Messages came from Spain, from Sevilla, a club that had suffered the same heartbreak months earlier when Antonio Puerta had collapsed and died. Sevilla's director of football sent words of comfort, saying, "We know how terrible this pain is. Our hearts are with Motherwell." For his funeral, thousands gathered at St. Mary's Church in Hamilton. Fans, players, officials, and families united in grief. His teammates carried his coffin, their captain, one final time, as the town fell silent. In the months that followed, Motherwell made sure his legacy would never fade. The club renamed its main stand the Phil O'Donnell Stand, a permanent reminder of the man who gave his all for the badge. His signature was stitched into every player's jersey for the rest of the season, and in 2011, a stainless steel memorial was erected outside the stadium, a place where fans could come to remember. But the tributes didn't end there. On May 25, 2008, Celtic Park hosted a special match in his honor, a celebration of his life as much as a farewell. Former teammates and friends filled the pitch. Legends like Henrik Larsson returned. 60,000 fans filled the stands, singing his name. The match ended 5-1, but the score didn't matter. What mattered was the unity, the love, the shared grief turned into remembrance. Every year since, on December 29th, people walk from Fir Park to Celtic Park, the journey between two of his football homes. It's a walk of respect, of remembrance, and of hope, raising money for heart charities and keeping Phil's memory alive. Even years later, his influence hasn't faded. His nephew, David Clarkson, carried his legacy on the pitch, wearing Phil's number 10 shirt until his own departure, a number that has never been worn again at Motherwell.